all of the capability that has been built in the private sector, how do we ensure that they're not being forced to sort of reroute back through this particular connection because of legacy security policies and programs we have in place. So it's very important to us that we're driving change on both sides and that they're coordinated. Inside of DHS, in partnership with the White House, as that is sort of the strategic layer, we're taking a hard look at what we've learned over the past several years. We've built a lot of capabilities within DHS over the past decade that I've been there, and we realize that it's time to look and understand: are we making the right capital investments? Are these the right capabilities that align to this emerging environment, and how are we able to shift our way forward? And so no decisions being made or anything like that, but at this point we're doing an assessment, and we wanted to partner, and I think this is an important partnership with industry, and I think in a lot of ways we want to push the boundaries of how we partner with industry. So we need to understand, the Department of Homeland Security, for those of you who are not aware, has a responsibility for providing security services and measuring the security, the cybersecurity of federal civilian agencies. And so the majority of our nearly $1 billion budget goes towards developing those sorts of capabilities. And a lot of it, again, is sort of developed in a legacy perimeter mindset of routing traffic through trusted internet connections and putting sensors there and figuring out how do we get the right signatures on within that traffic, putting IDS and IPS in as if there is a perimeter. Those are very important capabilities, and they are very valuable, but we want to look towards how are we able to at least keep pace with industry in both our security capabilities, but also, again, to ensure that we're able to match our emerging IT modernization effort. So we're looking internally at our capital investments. We're also looking at the how we can best leverage the authorities that we've been given. Congress, through the leadership of our Homeland committees, have really done an excellent job of laying out how the departments and agencies at a high level work with us, work with OMB, and they've given the department authorities to deploy these systems. I referred to what is the National Cybersecurity Protection System, which is more of a perimeter intrusion detection prevention system, but importantly can take classified information and use it to protect unclassified networks, but also deploying continuous diagnostics and mitigation, which is really an innovative way where Congress funds the department to work with departments and agencies. We are paying for the tools through a large purchase agreement with GSA, and we work with the agencies, understand their requirements, work with the systems integrators and the providers to deploy those tools, and then very importantly, we will be receiving that data back at DHS, and every agency CIO will have their own dashboard. And so come this fall, when we're finalizing the deployment of the federal dashboard, it'll really be the first time that we'll have an automated understanding of across the federal government of hardware, software, asset inventory. We'll be deploying identity and access management capabilities, and so we would have a standardized, consistent, automated view of what's on our networks, who's trying to access our networks, and being able to identify very quickly when we see a vulnerability. I'll use an example, if you all recall Heartbleed. When Heartbleed came out, our response was to try and get every agency CIO on the phone, have them go, see, do you have this? Let's come back, report to us in a couple days, and then we'll kind of continue to work through this manual process. Once this capability is deployed for the first time, we will be able to look just within the NCIC, understand, okay, we see that you have got, 3,000 servers running this version that we now know has this very significant vulnerability. It'll alert the agency CIOs in the department immediately, and then we can focus our resources on attacking that most significant issue. And I think that's been our greatest challenge, and I think that both within the private sector and within the government and the cybersecurity framework really sought to take this on, is how are we prioritizing? You can't secure everything to the same level. So how are we prioritizing what we do secure? And that's the last piece I want to talk about is through this assessment of understanding what our capabilities are, what's the policy framework that we want to operate in, and what does that mean for the future capabilities we're going to deploy, it's how are we best prioritizing those resources. And both within critical infrastructure and within the federal government over the past couple years, we've undergone an effort to identify what within the government we call high-value assets. And those are, I'll pick on one, is something like the system that generates Social Security numbers. So we can understand, once we have done an assessment of what those assets are within the federal government, agencies are no longer just looking at it in terms of, well, this is my system, this is my individual risk. We're looking at it from an enterprise risk perspective and understanding all the different stakeholders that participate and need information or access or would be affected by something happening, whether it was the availability or the integrity of that information being compromised. And then we can sort of mass our resources to ensure that those systems are being protected and that there are contingency plans in place should something happen to that information, or in certain cases, whether if they're providing services or functions upon which others depend. So same thing with critical infrastructure. Getting a much more solid understanding of systemic risk. Who owns the services and functions, the systems that operate, or those services and functions are dependent upon, and who's that stakeholder community that is dependent upon it? A lot of this cuts across sectors, but the communications sector is at the heart of a lot of this. So how do we think a little bit differently about working across sectors to understand dependencies? Where can the government help? Where do we not need to help? And where do we just need to push and convene? And I think a lot of, on the last point for us is both information sharing, but also refining significantly the information sharing and the information that we are able to provide to the private sector. It's very valuable, the private sector's participation in programs like automated indicator sharing. We receive so much valuable information for us that then helps us to better understand what is going on in a sector or across sectors or even within the government. And we want to build a capability to do sort of analytics on that and then pushing that back out. But most importantly, I think we need to understand, once we've jointly identified those systems that are so critical, what do those system owners and other stakeholders need to know in order to take action should something be going on? And that inside the government, that's our intelligence production cycle. And we understand the producers of intelligence work with those consumers to understand what your intelligence requirements are, and we work to produce products that meet those requirements. And I think as we evolve our next generation information sharing, particularly with the owners and operators of those most critical systems, is how do we as a government really ensure that we are producing products, and these would be more in the strategic and operational types of products, conversations, so that you're able to take action and that the entire community, because just because one entity may own one network that we deem critical for a variety of reasons in the process that we've all gone through, there may be downstream effects. If an action is taken on one network, there may be other customers that are affected. So how do we work through and have those same contingency plans within the private sector so we are mitigating the potential for significant consequences? Not everything can be perfectly secure, we have to assume, that something is going to happen. So we need to be prepared for those consequences. And that is where we're focusing. Our last bucket of effort is on the incident response, is how do we know when something has happened, how do we understand how to escalate the threshold, the severity of that incident, and how do we as a government organize ourselves. This is mostly captured in the National Cyber Incident Response Plan, but we need to continue to refine that and operationalize it. That might be the first time I've said operationalize correctly immediately. And how do we operationalize that, particularly with the communications sector? And how do we understand what it means to work together as industry and government to mitigate, ideally before the consequences spread and become a systemic issue. But in the event that they do, how do we do that together? And then how do we do that in the context of the broader emergency management world? I think those are sort of the big challenges that DHS really wants to take on. And we have such a great partnership with the communications sector, so I'm really looking forward to evolving that. And we want to continue to hear from you both on what we need to be doing better from a technology standpoint, but also what we need to be doing better as a partnership to manage better our national risk. And I'll just close with, I see somebody brought their child to work, and I really appreciate that. I was going to bring my son. He wanted to stay back in the office and hack computers. So thank you so much for having me, and I think I have a time for a couple of questions.
So what changes need to happen with the DHS and CTIC to promote and facilitate more information sharing and threat intelligence sharing amongst the private sector?
So I think a few things, and it's not just within DHS. It's in partnership with the intelligence community, and a lot of the value, again, that some of you are very familiar with these authorities, but for those of you who aren't, we have authorities to have non-public conversations with industry on national security and homeland security matters, and that allows us to have forums where we can have a conversation about exactly that. Let's define what your information requirements are, and let's work with the intelligence community and the law enforcement community to understand how best to use the resources within the government to be able to communicate that information back. And I want to get to less classified information, but there's always going to be some of that, but I want to get, even if we have to have a classified conversation, I think we've built the mechanisms to be able to have those conversations for the most part. But I want them to be valuable, and I want them to be something that we come together, whether it's in the context of an incident or something that we've identified that's much broader, and what actions can the private sector take? What actions can we take? And to sort of go towards a joint goal of reducing either the consequences of a specific incident or something that's more broadly affecting the community at large. So that's where I think, again, we have the authorities, we have the capabilities evolving, and I know a lot of companies have partnered with us already on the automated indicator sharing and our cybersecurity information sharing program, but we need to sort of evolve the jointness of it, if you will. Yes?
First of all, Jason Miller from Federal News Radio. When you're looking at the capabilities and mission areas and as you're taking an assessment, what's kind of the end goal of that effort? Is it I'll use the broad term reorg? Is there a report that would come? Can we talk a little bit more about that effort?
Sure. I think like I said, Congress has done a great deal for us, and we want to continue to work with Congress to ensure that we are organized appropriately and have a name that reflects our mission. I think in terms of the internal look that will float up into the cybersecurity strategy that we continue to work on with the new administration, and of course that'll start to come out in our budget process as well. But I want to, and one of the things that I neglected to mention is part of what I believe we need to do is focus on the fundamentals. A lot of what has challenged us and what has challenged, I think, a lot of people in the security industry is how do you measure whether you're doing well. And one of the metrics that I really like to point to is time to detect. And it is hard to measure that on when you don't actually own the network yourself, as in the case of DHS. But I want to get us back to how are we tangibly buying down risk and understanding, are we reducing the time to detect? Are we reducing the time to investigate? Are we reducing the time to respond to incidents within the federal government and then broadly as a community? And understanding how all the tools and the capabilities and the resources that we're putting in place, are they driving us towards reducing those times? And I'm not suggesting that those are necessarily the three, but we're taking a hard look at what are the right metrics, and that's not a simple question, but I think that's something as industry and as government, as people gather more experience, but also are deploying more tools that automate your ability to understand what's going on in the network and how fast you were able to take some of these actions. I think we can start to sort of reorient ourselves towards basic measurements or indicators of success, and how are we making a change in those, and ideally driving those metrics down. Yes, sir.
Mike Nelson with Cloudflare. We protect against DDoS attacks, and most of those attacks are coming from botnets overseas. So my question's two parts. As you look at other governments, and I'm sure you're talking to a lot of other governments who want your advice, which ones seem to be getting organized most effectively to tackle problems of network security? And which intergovernmental forums do you think are going to be the most promising when it comes to getting governments together to figure out how to work with each other and with the private sector?
Well, I will dodge your question about which governments are better. I think what I've seen interesting is that just not every country, but many countries are now recognizing that they need to organize themselves. I don't think that's been the case until recently. And you're seeing a lot of different models emerge as a result of that. And I think the jury's probably still out on which of those models work best. But I do think most countries are taking it seriously, and they all have a different landscape that they're trying to deal with internally. I think one of the very promising areas for us is our connections with other CERTs across the globe. And we have the United States CERT within our National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center. It's a long one. But they've, over many years, them in our Industrial Control Systems CERT within the Industrial Control System space, have built relationships with CERTs across the world. And in many cases, training countries in how the best way to build this capability. And I think that there is a lot of potential, and we've already realized much of that potential, is as these CERTs in other countries gain more capability in understanding what's going on in their country, I think there's more potential for joint operations and greater information sharing. We have a couple of countries who are working with us to connect into the automated indicator sharing program, so that we're automating not only internationalizing the 6 taxi standard, but we're also automating the sharing between CERTs. So I think there's great potential, and I think that's probably where the locus of that type of activity will start to happen.
All right, well, thank you very much, Ms. Blunt. I wanted to thank Ms. Monfort for sharing her insights on and for her partnership as we continue to defend against cyber threats, both here and otherwise. I want to thank everybody for joining our Cybersecurity Summit. I trust you have a greater appreciation for the proactive work we're doing within the industry on cybersecurity with technology, with tools, innovation, and with people, and also with our partnerships with government in order to keep our networks safe and secure and to lead our industry towards IoT and 5G. Our future depends on it. I also want to thank a few people who helped make this event possible. First of all, John Marino and Ishwar Pinampalli, who helped write the white paper you have there, so make sure you take a copy of that. Elise Downs, who planned this whole event, and Paula Hu Young helped put it all together. Kevin Ryan, who helped write and author, chief editor on the white paper. Brittany Serrano and Leo Morrison, who helped put all the visuals together and the video and so forth. And Jelaine Petrie, who helped with the video and all the press arrangements. And of course, I also want to extend to our entire staff, and of course to all our members and to our government speakers as well. So thank you very much. The exhibits will be open until 12:30, and have a great day.